Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping headfirst into the really complex world of mind-altering substances. We're going to look at how they work, where they came from, and some of these surprising new ways science is starting to think about them.
So you've probably heard these names thrown around, right? Acid, angel dust, special K. But what's the actual difference? I mean, they all mess with your perception of reality, but it turns out they do it in ways that are fundamentally different. Stick with us, and we'll break it all down.
All right, so to really get a handle on this, we've got to map out the territory first. The word psychedelic gets used for a lot of things. So to really understand what's going on, we need to split these drugs into three distinct classes, based on what they're actually doing to your brain.
So here's how it breaks down. First, you've got your classic hallucinogens, like LSD and mushrooms. These profoundly change how you perceive the world around you. Then you have the dissociatives, think PCP or ketamine. These don't just alter reality, they make you feel totally disconnected from it, almost like an out-of-body experience. And finally, there are deliriants, which cause more of a confused, delirious state. We're going to focus mainly on the first two.
Okay, let's zoom in on the most famous category, the classic hallucinogens. Their story is, well, it's ancient. It's woven into the spiritual fabric of cultures all over the world. But it also has this incredibly modern, almost accidental chapter that started in a lab. So yeah, for thousands of years, people have used plants like mushrooms and peyote for religious visions. But the modern story of the most famous hallucinogen, LSD, starts in 1938. A Swiss chemist, Albert Hofmann, actually creates it, but has no idea what he's made. It just sits on a shelf for 5 years, until 1943, when he accidentally gets a tiny amount on his skin. What happened next? Well, it changed everything. And by the 60s, LSD was a household name. And listen to this. In Hoffman's own words, you can just feel the sheer terror of that first bad trip. It's a powerful reminder that these experiences aren't always enlightening or fun. They can twist your own home into a house of horrors. A demon had invaded him. Wow.
So how in the world does this stuff work?
Well, it's basically a case of mistaken identity inside your brain. It all comes down to serotonin, one of our most important neurotransmitters. If you look at the molecular structure of LSD next to serotonin, you can see they look incredibly similar. That similarity lets LSD basically pick the lock on the brain's serotonin receptors, hijacking the whole system that controls your mood and how you perceive reality itself. Of course, nature figured this trick out way before any chemist did. Plants like psilocybin mushrooms and the peyote cactus, they've been used for centuries in spiritual rituals to create visions, and they do it by tapping into the very same brain chemistry. Okay, let's shift gears now to our next category, which creates a totally different kind of experience. This isn't about altering reality, it's about disconnecting from it. It's about a powerful, profound sensation of detachment. And here is the absolute key difference between the two. Hallucinogens, as we saw, mess with your serotonin system to warp your senses. Dissociatives, on the other hand, target a completely different neurotransmitter called glutamate. Glutamate is crucial for things like pain, memory, and how we connect with our environment. By blocking it, these drugs literally create that feeling of separation from your body and the world. And the main players in this category might surprise you, because they all got their start with medical intentions. PCP was first developed as a surgical anesthetic, but its side effects were just too extreme. So ketamine was created to replace it, and it's still used today. And then there's DXM, which is probably in your medicine cabinet right now. Yup, you heard that right. At really high doses, a common ingredient in over-the-counter cough syrup can produce dissociative effects that are similar to PCP and ketamine. It just goes to show how accessible and risky some of these substances can be. Now, whenever you're talking about substances this powerful, there are going to be a ton of myths and just bad information floating around. So let's get real for a minute and separate the fact from the fiction by looking at the actual documented risks. First up is this dangerous myth that lab-made means safe. The reality is that street drugs are made in underground labs with zero quality control. You have absolutely no idea what's really in there, how pure it is, or what the dosage is. There are no safety checks, period. And what about the whole "it's just a weekend" thing argument? Well, let's do some quick math. If you use every single weekend, that adds up to over 100 days a year. That's not occasional use, that's a chronic habit. And the effects don't just magically disappear on Monday morning, they can linger and impact your whole week. And this isn't just theory, we've got the data. Take a look at this chart from the National Institute on Drug Abuse. See that top line? That's 12th graders.
Reported LSD use nearly doubled in just 4 years, from 92 to a peak in 96. It just shows you how quickly trends can drive experimentation and risk, especially among young people. Now we have to talk about some of the really serious long-term risks. One of the scariest, especially with classic hallucinogens, is a drug-induced psychosis. And this isn't just a bad trip that ends. It's a persistent mental state that can continue for years, long after the drug is out of your system.
And then there's something you've probably heard of called flashbacks. The clinical term is HPPD, and it's pretty unsettling. This is where visual distortions from the trip, like seeing halos or trails behind moving objects, can come back spontaneously, without warning, sometimes for years after a person has stopped using. Okay, so after all of that, all the risks, the myths, the dangers, the story takes a really unexpected turn. Modern science is actually going back and looking at these compounds again, not for getting high, but for their potential to actually heal and rewire the human brain. And this new research has given us a new scientific term, psychoplastogen. It sounds complicated, but if you break down the Greek roots, it's actually pretty cool. Psych for mind, plast for mold, and gen for produce. It literally means mind-molding producer. It's a name for substances that can rapidly help the brain change and grow.
So how does this mind molding actually work? Well, it seems to be a 4-step process. First, the compound latches onto key brain receptors. This then triggers the growth of new connections between your neurons. As those neurons sprout more branches, the brain's communication network gets more complex and flexible. And it's this rapid rewiring that holds so much promise for healing conditions like depression and PTSD, which are often rooted in rigid, unhealthy brain circuits. And this is where it gets really mind-blowing. The research, while still in early stages, suggests that these compounds could be powerful tools against depression, anxiety, and even addiction. The very same brain mechanisms that cause hallucinations might be harnessed in a controlled, therapeutic way to treat our most stubborn mental health challenges. And that brings us full circle, doesn't it? We've gone from ancient rituals to panicked lab accidents, from counterculture to clinical trials. It's pretty clear that our understanding of these powerful molecules is just getting started. And it leaves us with this huge question. Could the very substances that once defined rebellion become a key to unlocking the future of mental health?